right. Welcome back to the Raj and Drew Show for Entrepreneurs. I am Drew Jackson. I'm here with my great friend, Raj Tedla. How you doing, Raj?
I'm doing very well. Thank you, Drew.
Wonderful, wonderful. And today I'm very excited about the topic. Like normal, I tend to be a pretty excited guy. But this one is something I've been studying recently. I've been reading some additional content, writing some content, got a training coming up on this topic. And the topic is coaching, but specifically the entrepreneur as coach. Now, when we say coach, maybe the first question I should ask, because I think there's a lot of different ideas out there. There's sports coaches, there's these concepts that we have in our mind around what a coach is. When you say entrepreneur as coach, what do you mean by coach? What does that mean? Can you define that for us?
So I define that in two aspects, which is not the traditional way. Coach is somebody who brings out the best in you.
Oh,
that is one of the biggest reasons a coach is. They go back and really ask you a lot of good questions to really go back and discover possibilities, really thinking about what the next steps are, trying to surface new awareness within us so that it can go back and solve the problem or get to the goal, what we are doing. That is the ideal definition of a coach. But from an entrepreneurship, I would go back and combine mentorship with coaching here. And let me tell you the reason why. If you go back and look at a startup company with 10 employees, 15 employees, the whole company is built around the entrepreneur. And when they're hiring people, they're not hiring people for their expertise. They're hiring people because they fit into the culture, they fit into the vision of what the entrepreneur has. So quickly there, the entrepreneur has to go back and really help them and mentor them with all the techniques or whatever expertise he has so that everybody can follow. So that is where the mentorship comes into picture. And as the company is growing, there will be more layers of people. Then he brings a coach so that his people, he can go back and coach them to bring out the best in his direct reports who can in fact go back and work with the next level. So these are the two levels. And that is how I go back and define basically coaching from an entrepreneur point of view, where they're playing the role of a mentor and a coach.
Yes. And I love the idea of mentor and coach. I think mentoring in and of itself, it's more prescriptive, right? It's telling you what you should do, what you need to do in a situation. And if you're deficient in your experience or in your understanding, we need more of that. We need more mentoring in those situations. Whereas coaching is about asking questions and helping the old idea that the answer is within. We're drawing from the well of information, and you're taking your experiences and you're applying them maybe to a situation that is a little bit different than something you've already been through, but you have experience to draw upon. And that's where coaching is best. I think you're absolutely right, where the ability to flow in between coaching and mentoring is the greatest of all skill sets. And I think the key to that is knowing when you need to be mentor and when you need to be coach. And I found, and you tell me that if this is something you agree with, I think to find that right balance, it's best to start with coaching first. So start with asking questions, start with trying to get a person to solve their own problem and get their brain to be thinking about, hey, what could I do? How could I change my thinking or my perspective in this situation? And you start there. And then if they get to a point where they go, I have no idea what to do. I don't know what my options are because I've never been in this situation before. That's when the mentor can show up and say, well, let's talk about a few options that you might want to consider. And you can go that route. What do you think about with the mentoring and coaching dynamic? How do you go about that?
Well, I have a slightly different approach to that.
Okay.
Basically, whenever you go back and look at a situation, there are three aspects. What it is that we need to get done, why is it important, and how can it be done?
Okay.
So what and why is an ideal candidate for mentoring? When it is a how, you want to be in the coaching, and 10-20% of the time you can be a mentor there as well. But if you look at because I'm talking more from an entrepreneurship with all the mentors I have worked with, and how and
Yes.
what best they can do. Because what needs to be done in a small company, as an entrepreneur, small business, growing company, that has to be more like mentoring. Hey, we need to do this. This is the reason why it is important. And that explanation has to happen. The what and the why, and it is more of a mentor relationship then.
Okay.
But how do you go back and execute and stuff? That will be more of a coaching session.
Okay.
Because it will be one way the entrepreneur tells them to do. But when he's coaching people, they might have brilliant ideas how to go back and execute. And he or she should be open to looking at different ideas and views. And that's the reason why the coaching piece becomes very important.
Okay. So do you go about, do you have a certain process that you go about engaging in coaching with entrepreneurs that you maybe do differently than with other clients?
So basically, I don't have a big name or anything else. I call it my 5-step process, a very simple name. I don't have any beautiful name or methodology. There are so many methodologies in the market, but I have a simple methodology. Whenever you have a situation, the first step I always talk about is what is the current reality? So establish focus. Because then we go back and start talking, we can talk about 100 things and we can never resolve them.
Yeah.
So before a coaching or mentoring or anything else, what is the current reality and what is the purpose of the focus? Like, Drew, if you're an entrepreneur, I come to you and say, hey, I have this problem, Drew. Your first question should be is, let us go back and really establish focus. Okay, Raj, let us explain to me. Then I will be starting to explain 3, 4, 5 different problems to you at the same time. So there you can be like a coach come mentor and go back and say, okay, I hear 4 different problems here. What is the most important piece of it? What is the most pressing that we need to accomplish first?
Yeah.
And now you're bringing that current reality and the establishing focus. Now I come to you and say, you know what, this is my number 1 problem because I can't send this to the customer without resolving this. And then we can start the discovery process. The first step is the current reality establishing focus. Once we have established, sorry, go ahead.
No, go finish your thought.
So I would move to the current reality. Once it is established, then the second step is now we want to go back into a solution mode, and it is discovering possibilities.
Yeah.
And like I said, basically this is all how right now, right? So I would be using more of my coaching techniques here. Okay, now we have established this. What do you think we need to be doing? And then ask a lot of wonderful, basically open-ended questions, so that you're bringing a lot of, it is almost like a brainstorming session. You're trying to go back and discover a lot of different possibilities. So my step number 2 is discover possibilities. How do we solve it?
Yeah. I like that. And we want to, I know in my coaching training, we want to avoid why questions because that can put people in a defensive posture. You know, why did you do that? And so, like you said, you want to ask those what questions because that can get them thinking more about the possibilities. So instead of saying, why did you do that? You could ask, what were you hoping to accomplish by doing that? And that what question is going to make them think, what was my thought process in doing that? And it keeps them out of trying to just defend themselves and put themselves in a posture where that's not productive really for the coaching engagement.
Exactly. So once you start discovering a lot of possibilities and based on the interaction with it, you go into 1 or 2 directions, which might seem much more feasible to get to the solution. Because at the end of the day, the goal is pretty much the solution, right?
Yeah.
The whole conversation goal is. So now the step number 3 is how do you plan the action? So you ask some great open-ended questions so that they are comfortable and understanding the roadmap, what they need to do so that they can execute on the possibility they have discovered.
Yeah.
And step 4 is one of the most critical part of it is surface new awareness. That is what I call step 4. And the reason this is very important is we don't want them to go and look at the first solution and jump on it.
Yeah.
And that is where you are asking different questions to go back and see, are there any other better solutions than what they have put together? Are there any other options for us to work with? So you're creating the surface new awareness so that everybody is comfortable with, and they're thinking through all the different angles before they finally settle on solution A or B or F.
Yeah, well, and the thing with multiple solutions, I used to be of this mindset that there was just kind of one right way, and I'd figure the one right way, and then I'd go to action, and it would work. No, we need to think through what are all the options, what are all like not we're not saying we're going to do any of them yet, and that's a lot of times I even like to help a client put out there a crazy option, like just a throwaway option, and that they're never going to do, but just to prove the point that we're just talking about all options that are on the table, and we'll get to a specific one you're going to take action on in the future. But be a possibility thinker in this moment. And so
Yes.
keep going.
So once you step there, then you are defining what is the roadmap to the goal, right?
Mm-hmm.
And until now, step 1 to step 4, we identified the problem, we brainstormed different ideas, we came up with an action items, we looked at it and optimized what can be the solution. So what does it indicate here? We are all still in the brainstorming session. Nothing has been done. So the step 5 is the recap piece of it. And the reason recap is so important is now the accountability is there. I always tell my coachee to recap what they have learned from the step number 1 to 4.
Yeah.
Generally, the coaches tend to do that. And then the accountability falls on the coach. So for an entrepreneur, if they really want their people to go back and execute, they always need to go back and ask the question such that whoever they're coaching, they recap the whole thing. Hey, this is what we discussed. This is what the next step is. These are the 2 things that I need to do. And I will come back and report to you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So the accountability is set, and they communicated that. It was not me as an entrepreneur going back and telling you what the deadline is. They are coming up with that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why the coaching model, the 5-step model, is very, very simple, but very effective.
Yeah. Well, what are some, what kind of feedback have you gotten from your clients who have put this practice, they put it into practice? So they've been the entrepreneur as a coach. They've used this tremendous tool of coaching in their business with their employees.
So one of the things I always go back and look at it is, they say, Raj, when we use the coaching skills and this 5-step model very effectively, the accountability is very, very high. That is the number 1 thing I hear from them, because people are coming up with the deadlines. People are coming up with the process steps. People are coming up with what can be done. So they're accountable for that.
Yeah.
And the entrepreneur for themselves, there are certain skills which they're mastering. Like when you're doing through this 5-step process, there are 4 skills that you start mastering once you start doing it regularly. The first thing is contextual listening. So are you reading between the lines? Are you listening between the lines? What is being said? What is not being said? And when you surface the new awareness step 4, when you are reading between the lines, listening between the lines, you can ask some great questions to see if there are any folds to be found, if there are new awarenesses that will come to the surface that can provide a better solution. That is one thing I have learned and heard my entrepreneurs telling me that. And they go back and say, it is much easier for me to ask some great questions. And because once I start asking questions, the people coming to me are learning. So one of the things recently I was talking to them and they said, Raj, there are a few people, they already come ready-made with 3 answers to me right now. Because he has been asking a lot of open-ended questions and brainstorming with them. They go back and think and say, okay, if I go to the entrepreneur, my boss, he will ask me all these questions. So let me go do that myself.
Yes.
And I will go back. And now instead of 30 minutes to 50 minutes, they're spending 10 minutes looking at the options. And still, the entrepreneur goes and asks a lot of great questions to go back and surface new awareness, even within this 3. And sometimes they might come with the 4th option, but most of the time they finalize one of the options to work with. So productivity and learning of their team members has gone through the roof.
That's huge. I mean, the accountability piece, the learning, at the end of the day, if you can reproduce yourself, you can get your team to think like you. It's really funny. I'm going to do a young person reference. I don't know if you've ever have you heard of Mr. Beast, Raj?
No,
Mr. Beast.
I'm not familiar.
He's one of the top YouTubers, and he's always giving money away. He'll give cars away. He takes all this money that he raises through his YouTube channel, gives it away, and does these over the top amazing videos. and he's a young guy under the age of 30. And I saw some short on YouTube, and it said it was asking Mr. Beast about creating his clone. And I was like, clone? Like, this guy is, it wouldn't surprise me is if he actually like paid to have somebody cloned or something like that, you know? And I'm like, what is going on here? He mentored the guy. And he said, this guy can run the company and make decisions as if I was making the decisions. He spent every day with me, like day and night. And these are young single guys, right? Day and night with me for whatever he said, a year or two. And he said, at this point, I could totally walk away and know that the entire company would run in the way that I would run it because I mentored him. And it's funny because when you think about, I don't know about you, but I hear from small business owners all the time. They're like, why don't they think like me? And you ask them, how much time are you spending with them? Well,
Exactly.
I'm too busy doing whatever else, right? Well, you have to spend time with them. You have to ask them questions. You have to have that interface with people on your team. Not everybody, but the people that are going to be your key decision makers. If you want them to think like you, if you want them to make decisions like you, there has to be a training process. It won't happen overnight. You can't send them to a course that's going to make them think like you, because not everybody thinks like you.
Exactly.
You've got to have that interaction time, and coaching is a fantastic way to do that coaching, mentoring, engagement, and create your own clone virtually.
Yes. And Drew, there are a couple of other advantages as well. Basically, when you go back and take the mentoring coaching approach to really be very good and successful in the 5-step process, you really learn how to message it. You're not only asking the questions, but you're really messaging it in the right way to bring that heightened awareness. And while you're doing this process, you're always in the process of acknowledging people, acknowledging great ideas, acknowledging their behavior, acknowledging their next steps, whatever the case may be. And now when it is being consistently done over a period of time, what happens? That is the culture you're building. Once you build a culture, they treat their customers the same way. They treat their peers the same way. They're always very effective in listening. They're always asking open-ended questions. So the culture of innovation and problem solving always gets into the picture naturally when coaching is one of the things. Yeah. Because I know some companies, they go back and every single manager goes through a 2-day, basically manager as a coach training. There are some companies, they have put it as part of their management requirements. So when you have those 5 steps and these 4 skills, what happens? You're building a beautiful culture for yourself. Yeah. And that is the most powerful piece of it from this 5-step process. So how would somebody kind of begin that process, engage? What do they do? What's that first step? If I'm an entrepreneur, I don't have, I'm listening to this idea of being a coach for the first time. I've never had a coach, but I like the concept. I like the idea. I like what I'm hearing. What is step 1? What do I do? So the first step I would say for anybody is do some, basically, first hire a coach. If your financial situation, everything is there, basically you want to experience being coached. Yeah. Once you experience the coach, it becomes very natural for you. And most of the certified coaches, they should be having some resources and things to go back and help people. Okay. And the second thing is they can go back and send us an email and we'll send them the details about all the things they can do. We are very comfortable. We have the 5-step model. They can go back and look at it, understand that. We have some literature to send. And if they're really interested, they can go back and attend a 2-day training of ours. That is there. But most of the people really like doing that piece. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. Get a coach and to begin that process, I think it's powerful. Yes. And even at the end of the day, look, they're entrepreneurs. Go try it, give it a shot. Exactly. You listen to this podcast, try out doing it and get some practice doing it. I mean, that's the only way. Go in there, say, and instead of jumping right in and telling your team members what to do, begin to ask them open-ended questions. What questions? What do you think you could do? What are your options? Ask them those types of questions to get them thinking for themselves. Hey, practice if you got kids, practice on your kids, Exactly. And use that as a starting point. And Drew, I can put a bet on it is if you have a lot of teenage kids, and instead of going be a parent, be a coach to them and start asking open-ended questions,
Yeah.
you will see a significant difference.
Yeah.
Because I can proudly say that when my kids were growing, everybody said, oh my God, once they become a teenager, it's so difficult to handle them and everything else.
Yeah.
Basically, I don't know my blessings. Should I count my blessings or what? I really never had any issues with it.
Mm.
We had a great life, great relationships during the teenage years. Even today, when they're grown, all of them are working very, very well. They still are very, very close as a family.
Mm-hmm.
They still reach out for advice. They still reach out for my coaching sessions. So
Yeah.
I would say, even as a parenting tool, that is a perfect and a great tool for it. Because the two skills we need when we are in really working with teenagers or employees is the contextual listening and discovery questions.
Mm-hmm.
And the key word is discovery questions. A lot of people ask a lot of questions, but a different intention.
Yeah.
And that intention piece of it determines that.
Yeah.
And that is where I go back and tell, when you're trying to establish the body language piece of it, pay attention to your body language.
Mm.
See, because 55% of our communication is body language.
Yeah.
So when you're talking to people, if the body language is not reflecting your questions or your listening skills, then you're losing it.
Yeah.
And the second part of it is the tone of your voice.
Mm-hmm.
The tone of the voice, 38% of is tone of your voice. So now, if you look at your body language and your tone of voice, 93% out of the 100 is pretty much that.
Yeah.
And you have not even heard a single word. So those are the critical things, your language piece of it and stuff. And those three things come out very well when people trust you.
Yeah.
If people don't trust you, this whole step will be a surface exercise only. Nobody will bother about it. Nobody will start opening up. And the whole process will be a waste of time.
Mm-hmm. I think a key component with being successful in the coaching model is the ability to reserve judgment. Exactly. And when it comes to tone of voice and body language, that's what people read. If they say something and your body starts twitching and you just are so uncomfortable with what they said, and so, as a parent, if your kids say something, oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that, or you thought that, or you said that, or you responded that way. You got to reserve judgment, right? Because there's so many they're not going to share more information with you if you immediately jump to judgment and how you think that was a stupid decision or whatever the case is. You've got to reserve that judgment. And I got teenagers, Raj, so I'm not saying that I'm perfect at this by any stretch. I'm working on it. But yeah, that is so true. And I think it's a great element. It's why we can go in as outside coaches into an organization, because it's not personal for us.
Yes, exactly.
But so if you're going to coach internally, which anybody can do it will require discipline on your part to not take it personally and trust us. If you do it that way, it's going to benefit you and the organization in the end, because now you're going to have transparency. You're going to have open communication. And instead of your team just telling you what they think you want to hear, they're going to tell you the truth. And now you have a good baseline or starting point, and you can build their competencies from that point. Instead of, I've had conversations with business owners that go, I think they just parrot back to me what I said to them. And it's like, well, yeah, because they're probably afraid of you,
Exactly.
And so they're not learning and they're not growing. They're just telling you what they think that you want to hear.
Yeah. So Drew, I'll share one example which happened like 5 or 6 weeks ago. I was coaching one of the entrepreneurs, and basically we were talking about it, and she was pretty close to firing someone.
Mm.
And I said, because I know when she hired her about 7-8 months ago, basically she came in and said, Raj, this was a great candidate, everything else. So in about 7 months, things changed.
Mm.
And I was very curious about it. And then I said, you know what? Let us go back, and I encourage you to go back and work with her more from a coach perspective. So I went through the same process with her, spent a couple of hours going through this process. 6 weeks later, she said, Raj, I'm going to give her another 6 months to see, because I see so much of change in her.
Wow.
And the interesting part of it is the entrepreneur changed, not the person she's
Yeah.
working with, because she was really listening a lot. She was listening to understand,
Yeah.
and she was asking questions to really understand her viewpoint rather than she was not listening to defend herself. So the mindset, the trust and confidentiality slowly changed. It is they're not there completely there because it has been only 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But she has come already to the conclusion saying that, you know what, let me go back and watch her for the next 6 months and see what happens.
Yeah.
So this was a very critical position. And basically they would have spent at least $30,000 to $40,000 in hiring somebody else through a headhunter if they needed to bring a new person. So they saved outrightly $30,000 to $40,000 at least for the next 6 months. And I'm sure right now, if they have seen a change in 6 weeks, I know it's going to work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because now she's getting and she's asking me a lot of questions. Whenever she has a critical situation, now she's saying, Raj, can I use this? Can I use this? So she's much more open in the learning mode to go back and handle this particular employee of hers.
Yeah.
So if somebody says coaching and cost, I think $40,000 for a few hours, that's a powerful, powerful ROI.
Yes. Yes. And that's only with one employee, right?
Exactly.
Multiply that out by a few employees and your ROI is there in a moment. So wow, those are some powerful examples of how coaching can work when people put it into practice, when entrepreneurs put those skills into practice. You can really see a difference in your organization. Powerful stuff. Well, what else, anything else with Entrepreneur as a coach that you want to share with us today?
So I really want to go back and share a couple of points which are very important for the entrepreneur point of view. These are like successful coaching practices.
Yeah.
The first piece of it, the guide the questions and listen for responses. The listening skills is very, very important. And then I remember I was telling you about the mentoring versus coaching piece of it.
Yeah.
So follow the 80-20 rule, the old Pareto principle.
Yes.
80% of the time you're asking your open-ended questions. 20% of the time you're telling them what to do. Because we are so good at it. We have so much of experience. We have a tendency to tell things to do and say, hey, I've been there, done that, do this. That is mentoring, but don't use that more than 20% of the time.
That's good.
And the third bullet I keep on telling you is ask questions that encourage dialogue, open-ended questions. You're not asking yes or no questions. You're asking for open dialogue where they're comfortable and they're sharing something. You are building on that. Because that way, the depth of the crust of the problem raises, and basically you can get some lot of new awareness around that piece of it.
And in that, when you ask those questions, pause, allow time for a response, allow time for them to think. Entrepreneurs tend to be fast.
Yes.
Allow time for a response. And sometimes it's almost like truth serum, you know, when you're silent and you just allow them the time to respond.
Yeah. And you reminded me of the thing I learned from my coach several years ago was here for entrepreneurs, think of responding versus reacting. Just think of going to a doctor, right? When he gives you medication, and if the doctor says reacting, that is bad news because there is reacting and your body is not liking it.
Yeah.
But hey, your body is responding. That is good news.
Right. That is good. I like that.
And that is the way you want to bring to this piece of it. You don't want to react. You don't want to jump to answer the question. You want to pause. And when you take a pause, think about it even for 15 seconds. That will be responding to it because now you understood them, you listened to them, and now you internalized it, and now you are saying something.
Yeah.
And that even 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 30 seconds pause is very powerful. And I tell entrepreneurs, it's okay if you pause for a minute or two. Silence is golden here. Because both of them are processing a lot of information going back and forth.
Yeah.
And that is one of the key pieces of it. And then even when basically the fifth step is provide the direction, not the answers. Because you keep on asking things and say, oh, did you think of this? And then give them a chance, give them a little bit rope so they can build on it and take it to the next level of awareness, next level of action steps. So those are some 5 good, successful coaching practices. If they can simply remember and try to practice, it is going to be huge.
That's great. I love those. Those are powerful tips for having good coaching engagements and really making sure that your posture is, proper. That's so much of it is how are you coming into it? How are you? And I might even say if you aren't in the right mindset, maybe just cancel the coaching session, right? If you know that you're not in the right mindset to actually listen as the entrepreneur, and you're too frustrated, or there's too much urgency around something. If you cannot get over whatever is going on in your head in that moment, maybe either postpone or cancel the session for that day so you can get your mind right. Because I get it. There's a lot going on when you're in the organization, and but you want to make sure that you come in with the right mindset for a coaching session with your team if you want to see the most effective result from it.
Yeah, and that is where the emotional intelligence, the self-awareness piece comes into picture.
Yes,
because everybody's there, and again, that is the first couple of questions. Like if you came and I'm not in the right mood, I say, Drew, how urgent is this?
Yeah.
Can this wait? Can this wait until the evening or tomorrow? And if they cannot wait, you go back and say, can you redirect them to somebody else who can handle this?
That's good.
Because it is better for you to go back and put a stop, because you are self-aware that this is not the right time for getting into the discussion. Because sometimes it might be a personal thing. Sometimes you might have already told them thrice and still they are making the same mistake, and you really don't have the patience then.
Yeah.
So these kind of
no,
things.
That never happens, Raj. That never happens.
I know. Just 25 times a day.
Yeah, right.
So having that self-aware, and again, using the coaching skills, right? Basically, what did I say? Basically, whenever you want to establish focus.
Yeah.
So any situation, first establish focus. And then ask the right question based on where you are and where your mindset is. And the thing is, hey, can you go back and talk to somebody else? Or can this wait? Simple question is, can this wait?
Yeah.
You don't need to give them a reason. You don't need to tell them that you're mad or you're not able to regulate your feelings. You don't need to say anything. Simple question.
That's great. Perfect. Well, awesome. I think that's powerful. I think that's a lot of information for one podcast episode to get folks set on the course to know how to have their first, or maybe their 51st coaching conversation with someone on their team. And Raj, that was fantastic as you really walked us through the entrepreneur as a coach. So thank you for doing that. What a wonderful session. Hey, everybody listening out there, once again, we're accessible. Our contact information is in the link below. Please connect with us on LinkedIn. We would love to connect with you, and feel free to direct message us, ask us questions. What would you like to see us talk about in the podcast? We want to make sure that this is relevant to you and the journey that you're on. But with that, thank you so much for listening to the Raj and Drew Show for entrepreneurs. And it's been a pleasure. Raj, sign us off today.
I just want to go back and end with this. All entrepreneurs who are listening there, basically ensure that trust and confidentiality are there in every communication and discussion you have. Because I want to really stress that if you don't have the trust, if you don't have the confidentiality, whatever you do here will be an exercise, but nothing will come out of it. So I just want to leave everybody with that. Make sure that you have the trust and confidentiality before you get into a coaching relationship. The 5-step methodology is a very, very powerful methodology. Again, if you find your hands on some other methodology, that is perfectly fine. Use the methodology that works for you, but significantly take advantage of the methodology. And that's what I say. And thank you, everybody, for listening, and have a wonderful day.